Hi guys, Dan here from Trojan Art Painting. In this video we're going to be prepping this figure for painting. It's a Gripping Beast 28mm Anglo-Saxon Warlord for SAGA. You'll notice as I'm cutting it out of the blister here, I'm cutting it down low and even all the way around the bubble there, because I'm going to use that bubble as a disposable tray to catch all of the metal filings and other debris that I generate as I'm putting this guy together. Now the figure here, it's really nothing to write home about. It looks like it's an early to mid 90s maybe sculpt. The mold it was cast in is definitely worn out. There was a lot of flash, pretty significant mold lines, and on the undercuts there were big clumps of metal as well. And by the way, these do contain lead. The figure's pretty generic pose compared to what other manufacturers are doing these days. It leaves a bit to be desired. I'd probably give it maybe a C for overall quality. I mean, you can find a lot better than this out there, but I guess I'll just leave it at that. Here, just using an X-Acto number 11 blade to scrape the mold lines off. You beginners out there, the best way to scrape a mold line on a relatively smooth surface is just to hold the blade perpendicular and scrape. If you have uneven surfaces, you have to come from the lower surface to the cut toward the higher surface, and then cut down from the higher surface to the lower surface, so you're not actually scraping off the detail of the figure. Also, there was a pretty bad mold line right across this guy's back in the chain mail. That's one of the most difficult areas to clean, of course, because as you scrape the mold line off, you tend to scrape the detail of the chain mail off as well, so you have to be real careful with that. You can see right here I'm having to cut a big chunk of metal out from one of the undercuts I mentioned earlier behind his right hand sword. Again, something I'm just not used to dealing with these days, except with older figures or older worn out molds. Alright, now he's looking a little more cleaned up. Next we'll take the sanding stick and just smooth off the rough edges left by the X-Acto knife cuts. This is especially important on the areas that are rounded, like the sleeves, the leggings, and probably most importantly in this case the helmet. With the helmet being conical like that, you need to make sure you get it absolutely smooth. Okay, next is the shield. Just hold the X-Acto knife blade perpendicular and scrape the edge of the shield all the way around to get off the burrs and the flash. I also use a sanding stick after this to smooth it out a bit, but I didn't get it in the shot, so you're going to have to miss out on that. Next is the sword. Same thing here. Just scraped it perpendicularly all along the blade, along the handle and pommel, then went back with a sanding stick. Okay, next is the base. The figure came supplied with this Renedra 40mm round plastic base. All I'm doing here is just cleaning up a couple of spots where it connected to the sprue. Come back later, clean up the edge after I put on the magnetic underside. Speaking of which, this is just a thin adhesive magnetic sheet. Just cutting off a piece here and applying it on the underside of the base. So make sure and press it down good, especially around the edges. You'll notice here how I'm after I press it down, I'll turn over and press down all the way around the edge to make sure you get a nice seal around the edge so it doesn't want to lift up while you're cleaning. Then I just cut it out. Just angle the scissors slightly inward so you don't have excess magnetic sheet hanging out, which is just going to mean more sanding. Also, be real careful not to cut the plastic base with the scissors, and angling the blades on the scissors helps you prevent that as well. Also, just don't open the scissor blades wider than the thickness of the base. After that, the sanding. Notice this sand in one direction from the middle of the base out toward the edge. So from the middle out, that way you're not inadvertently peeling back the magnetic sheet from the base edge. After that, just square up with the edge of the base and go all the way around. And then at about a 45-degree angle, go ahead and go around the top edge of the base as well to kind of round off that squared off top edge. Next here, I'm just attaching the base to a painting plinth with double back foam tape. Okay, next is the hydrocal. I have it in this one container here in various thicknesses. I'm going to use it to make some stone slabs to build up the base. I want the Warlord to be a little more elevated, a little higher than everybody else around him. Plus the pose this guy's in, if you put him flat on the base, he's kind of leaning way forward, kind of leaning almost down, at a down angle. So I'm going to put a couple flat slabs and then a slab that's angled up that he's standing on, so it'll make him have more of an up angle instead of a down angle that he's running at to make him a little more like he's in charge. Okay, so just kind of figuring out how to arrange the hydrocal on the base. Once I get it kind of in the arrangement that I think might work, I go ahead and glue it down with some super glue. Now it would be easy just to use some zip kicker here and make everything stay in place. But once you start using that zip kicker, even if you're not spraying the figures directly, the fumes will start to harden super glue really fast. And so it makes it a little tougher using super glue on other figures around it. For instance, if I was to use zip kicker on the base right now, and then I went to glue the guy down, the super glue would start to harden right away, and then when I put the glue on the shield or on his hand, it would start to harden just from the other zip kicker on the base before I got it in position. Now, so you have to be really careful about that. So I decided so far not to use the zip kicker just yet. Now I'm just going to use my cutters to trim some of the excess off the base of the miniature here so it'll fit on the slab that I've positioned for him to stand on. So I'm just kind of cutting the outer edges off 3 parts of the rounded base to make it small enough to fit on the slab there. Okay, now I'm just going to glue the miniature down to the slab. It's kind of hard to tell on this angle maybe, but it is at an up angle, so I'm positioning where he's going to be pointing up, which makes him, as I mentioned earlier, not be slanted so downward. Trying to get him kind of centered on the base there. Let's get him where I want him. Now I am going to use some zip kicker because he's heavy, and with the The hydrocal being porous, he's not going to stay there very good without the zip kicker. But certainly don't want to. I want to spray it down low on the base. Don't want to get it up on his hands where I'm still got other stuff to glue. Although the fumes are going to make the super glue on the hands dry a lot faster, I'll just have to work quicker. So here I'm putting the shield in place. Now anything like any equipment that you're gluing onto a figure, like spears, lances, swords, shields, etc., you want to try to have at least 2 anchor points for it. So I glued his hand, of course, into the shield boss, into the center of the shield, but also I glued it, the bottom of his shield, to his knee, and that gave it 2 anchor points. It'll make it a lot stronger. Don't really have that choice with the sword in this case, though. But you don't want to put a big glob there. Now you're going to get in danger of getting a glob when there's already been zip kicker sprayed. But in this case, what you do is just put a little bit of glue on a needle or a thin piece of wire and apply it that way instead of just globbing it on and leaving a big mess. And also use a paper towel to soak up the excess. Okay, next is the putty to build up the landscape on the base. In this case, Tamiya white putty, same as the Tamiya gray putty, but different color. That's the only difference. This stuff's thicker than gesso, but thinner than green stuff. So in my opinion, it's perfect for this type of thing. Also, you don't get any shrinkage, and it dries a little slower than green stuff, but a lot quicker than gesso. Here I'm just using a sculpting tool. Remember to wet your sculpting tool. Help keep the putty off it. You'll see here that I initially didn't wet my sculpting tool, and a lot of the putty's sticking to it. Once again, the ubiquitous paper towel shows up. Here used to wipe the sculpting tool. Once all the putty has been applied and smoothed out, just let it sit for about 30 minutes or so because it's not real thick in this application, and it's ready for priming.